Okay, hello, let's start. My name is Eugene Tulika. I'm part of Magento team. I work for community engineering. You've probably seen my tweets because you are here. So today we want to talk about our new feature, which is called, we call it Bulk API, but it has long history of different names. And initially this project started by initiative of our two solution partners, Comwrap and Balance Internet, and they were our main contributors to this project. And due to their effort, now we have this new feature implemented, and we want to share a little bit more details on how it works and why is it needed. So today we have two presenters. It will be Alex from Comwrap, and it will be Katie from Balance Internet. And let's dive into details. So I pass my control to Alex first, and then we will switch to Katie.
Thanks for introduction. Yeah, my name is Alex Lizu. I'm working at Comwrap, like Magento technical team lead. And yep, I'll switch. I'm prepared a small presentation. I'll switch to it. If there will be some questions, please tell me, because I will not see your screen. So yep, yeah, start. Everything is fine? You see my screen?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
So yeah, generally, as Eugen said, we call in this project Magento Bulk API, but I would say it's like biggest part of it, was implemented of Asynchronous API. And the story before it was that we had a big user case. I guess maybe it was even the same time as Balance Internet had this case, that we had a client who had a big amount of data to import in Magento from ERP system. And this ERP system was able to import in Magento only products asynchronously. So it's not waited till answer is coming from the first request and sending directly the next and the next and the next. And at first view, it was fine with a small test, but when they started to make a real big test, we faced with several problems. So the biggest one was that when Magento has a big amount of data, it's failed with deadlocks on the tables. So like multiple requests try to write at the same time in the same table, and Magento throw an exception there. Then we faced the problems that the system was very overloaded, because like trying to save 100 products simultaneously, that's a really big effort for the system, which loaded MySQL too much. Also, our ERP system was not able to repeat the fail request and to read the answer. So it just like throw an exception and then it's going to the next one. So, and that was impossible to resend the failed one. So there was like one bunch of import which executes, and if something failed in the middle, we could not check which exact entities was it. And then we had to restart it. So that was not a way how we had to develop it. So we tried to find a better solution, like, and the idea was to put the middleware between Magento and ERP system. And this middleware got all requests which are coming to Magento API, push them to queue. In this case, we use RabbitMQ, and then RabbitMQ executes them one by one. In this case, all products went through. And I guess this workflow is still up and running for last half a year, and we never had a problem with it. So after this one, we got even better idea. And I guess as we are here with Balance Internet together, they had the same issue. And we came approximately to the same idea that generally Magento Commerce inside has already the RabbitMQ classes, already the functionality to work with queues. And the idea was that why should we use the middleware if we can use Magento? And then we thought, okay, then we are making the possible that all Magento API REST calls will be executed asynchronously. So they can accept asynchronous requests. Then they put them in a queue, and then queue will execute those requests and proceed like products normally in Magento. Then also we needed some status. So we need to develop an API for get the statuses of this request, that we can track it in case of the errors appear. And we had to adopt the Swagger scheme, and it also works correctly with this. And on this point, that was mostly idea of balanced internet, which I think is a great one, is to have the bulk API in this call, so we can transfer multiple items in one call. For example, we can transfer 20 products in one body of the API request, and they will be processed correctly. So like switches also will reduce amount of system memory usage. So yeah, during our development, like I'll make the short overview, then I'll make some demos. So we extended the Magento in this way that you can take any post, put, or delete requests, add async in the middle, like a sync prefix, and those requests will be processed asynchronously through Magento. So it will go through RabbitMQ, and RabbitMQ will execute it then one by one, reading it from a queue that I created. And in addition to that, we had implemented 2 status endpoints where you can get the statuses of your calls. So in case if it's a bulk operation, you will get one, when you make in the one call, for example, with bulk entities for created products, you get in back UID. And based on this UID, you can check the status of the whole bulk request and then see the status of each operation in this bulk request. Yep, so that was like short overview of the idea and how we came to it. Then I will, during the development with Magento, we used the then hub where we had the epics. Which we defined the epics, we still have some work to do, which I mean, we definitely like to work with Magento together, and I hope we will proceed. So we have already some improvements of this feature, which will be nice to have in the future. But we have several epics already done. Yeah, by the way, when we started this project, Magento RabbitMQ, like a synchronous operation extension, I would call it, it was located in Magento commerce system. And I guess since 3 weeks, it was merged to 2.3. And then from 2.3, it will be available in Community Edition, which is awesome. I'm not sure, was it caused by our work or was it the idea before, but in any case, the result is very good. Eugen, do you know, was it a...
So this was a combined effort of community. We had different discussions and with different people regarding that, and a lot of positive thoughts was about that. If we have it in the open source edition, then it will be more leverage for extension developers to use the queues, and by the end of the day, the framework for queues will become better because we will see more and more usages and we will see how it goes. While if it's just locked in enterprise edition, we have less exposure to community and then we have less feedback ourselves. So I think that was the main reason, and after some discussions, we decided to move it.
Yeah, it sounds great, and result also good. So we could finally, in the beginning of development, we had to split our work between 2 different repositories. That was Community Edition and Enterprise Edition. And now finally we can concentrate on one work, which will be community, so we can share it also with community and so on. So yeah, we had the main epics. We had the small one, which was extend API extension to use inject pool logic. So this kind of was a way that we can easily then extend via XML, add a new routing in a REST endpoints. So we could add the async endpoint there, and then all requests was going through this URL were forwarded to our extension. So the first one and the biggest one was support for sync operation web API. So generally the topic which I just described, that all requests which are going to this URL, so with this prefix, it's no matter which API call, it's checking all API calls which are post, put, and delete. We especially exclude the get because generally we didn't find the user case where GET request may be asynchronous. And yeah, then I will show the small example then. Generally, I have here the Magento backend somewhere. And let's check if I was logged in still. Nope. So we have it's like a clean Magento installation with empty database. So we have here the products which are not here, and I create the small script which will run CURL requests, so like a REST request to create a product, and it will do it. It will create at the same time. It will create 100 requests to Magento. So generally, that's what it's doing. It's just making at the same time 100 post products requests with some short data inside of Magento. And Magento is getting those requests and then putting them to the queue. So if you will check the RabbitMQ queue, that generally our queue, which is filling up with a request, hopefully. And not so fast as it was without the video turned on, but still. Generally, my local environment is not any dedicated production server. But still, you can see that the amount of requests are growing and those queues. We have here created this async operation all queue, which is catching all those requests. So we have 101 requests in a queue. Then Magento Enterprise Edition, I mean, before Enterprise, now Community, they have this command for consumer start. And we can start this consumer, which generally reading from this queue the requests, and then proceeding them. Yep. So in this case, it's reading from database. No, so sorry, not from database. It's reading from the queue the request and creating the products in Magento one by one. In this case. So then, just if we will go to Magento backend, then we will see the products created here. Yep, so 86, I guess it's still up and running. And generally, we have then all those products created here by this request. That was kind of asynchronous call presentation. No presentation, it's a demo. Then I have a couple of more just to show you how it works. That was this call which I just executed, but I executed it 100 times. Just refresh to see it's 100. Then yes, we have the bulk. So in this case, we have 3 items in one body. And the screens. And then Magento accept those requests and see that it's a different products. It's creating one bulk operation, and it's creating 3 operations in this bulk in this case. And as output, and in the same output for the single entity, we see the bulk UID, which is generated on creation new bulk request, and we see the status of each entity inside. And generally, if we will then use just this bulk ID, we can request the status of it. We have 2 statuses. We have short status and we have detailed status. And short status, it's deliver back only the status ID. And if developers need some debug information or they have some problems with it, they can use detail. In the detailed case, we will return back the data that Magento outputs through the normal API call. So in this case, if we create the product, we have back the body of the output of usual synchronous request to Magento. And if you are a developer and want to debug what's going on wrong or just check it, you can just go through. So yeah, that's like example of the status output. We have here also topic name and data, and in just get status, you have generally only the statuses. Yeah, those, okay, like for end user, that's not really a lot of info, like what is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that will be documented as for developers, and you're just somebody interested that's you have complete retrievable fail, not retrievable fail, open and rejected. It's 5 statuses which Magento returns from operations list when we make the request. Yeah, in case, for example, if we have bulk request where the one of the product is failed, so I mean that this one is not corresponding to the schema, so that's product 2 is wrong one. It will reject this request no matter how many items inside. It will reject the full request. So generally, developers have to provide the valid request to Magento. They could not expect that we will catch everything. Yep. Also, like another example, we have create customer call here. So that, like I said, I'm not talking only about the products. And also, if you will get the status out of it. Yep. That was example. I made an example of the error in this case. So it was failed. And the result is because the customer with the same email address already existed in the system. All those requests we just showed, they were executed in the background through RabbitMQ. So you can see there are some peaks. Course I had the consumer running, which read all those operations. Yeah, when like last small example, we blocked the whole get. I mean, we can try to use get for this one, but you will get a back header 04 and message not found for the request. Yep, generally this was like a small demo of the work that we have done that's covered those epics for sync operation and for status reporting. And we had one more which Balance Internet made, and that was a Swagger generation. And I guess Carrie will have more info about that, and he can show us something. Carrie?
Yeah, sure. I'll just share my screen just 1 second. Cool. Can you see that?
Yep.
Cool. So Alex did a pretty good job of explaining the background, but yeah, it might help I'll just quickly recap some of our motivations for getting involved. So we had a very similar situation where we've got a middleware platform, and
a recent survey found that many Americans don't know the first thing about how their
and with all of our clients going on to Magento 2, we started finding problems in being able to get the amount of throughput through the API. But we were really keen to use the API in Magento 2 because so much work had been put into improving it. In Magento 1, we obviously didn't have the coverage, but now it was possible to integrate a lot of stuff. So we started using all the singular APIs. And we found that once we got into the level of concurrency required to update products and stock as frequently as some of our clients required, which could get into about, once we started getting to about 20 requests a second, we started finding deadlocks, mainly in MySQL was our biggest issue. But also it was quite resource intensive as well, trying to put so much data through at the web server end. So we looked at a few things, similar sort of options as Comwrap. So the first one was that we thought of similar implementation to what we've got currently with a which is like the async implementation that we have now. Yeah, we thought that this would be good because we can try and alleviate or throttle some of the deadlocks in Magento. So our Magento team and our middleware team can both like look after their own infrastructure. So if Magento team has a sale on, or they want to scale up the processing because their queue's getting full, then they can take care of that. So yeah, those are just some like really kind of pseudocode type responses that we put together. So then the other thing that we looked at doing is like, would an import export API be possible? So the things that we liked about this is that it would put a bit more attention into the import export module, and any performance improvements that we make get shared with that. So a lot of people at that point in time were using import export to update large volumes of data. So to us, that seemed like a way that maybe we could be able to get it in, but it also, it had a bit of a strange feeling to it, sort of running what could effectively be a CSV file through an API, even though some other large systems do that. And there were other considerations as well, like things like model events, they might not be fired the same. And then another option was to create a specific bulk API endpoint for each entity. Some of the things that we didn't like about this was that, like if we wanted to get coverage of everything, then there is work to do, a lot of work to do for every entity. This could be things like optimizing or changing the way that the resource models work, but it turns out that that really wasn't that feasible. And there'll also be a lot of work to get complete coverage on the API. So what we've got now is kind of, I guess, a solution that looks like number one, which is what Alex has described. So for our part, we took on some of the Swagger work. We'd done quite a lot of work with that before. So we have, we've been using it a lot for like as an option to offer some of our clients a quick way to bootstrap their client. And also we used it as a basis for the API client that we put in our middleware. But we found that it required a bit of post-processing to get it how we needed it. So those are contributions that we sent back while we had been developing. So yeah, for us, I think the Swagger component was quite a good fit. So what we've done is we've created an alternative parameter in Swagger. So this is, we're probably going to make this into a bit more of a nice path. But the idea is that we dynamically read the current Swagger schema and convert it. So all of the post and put requests, we convert them to have a different asynchronous response. So we read in the class metadata from the asynchronous interface that Comwrap has added. And then that just gets output as a plugin. So what we did find is that some things like, so all the GET requests we excluded from the schema because it didn't really make sense. And most of the problems that we had with, in terms of our original problem was to do with writes and not really reads so much. And for some of the longer GET requests in Magento, a lot of them have got pagination on them. So there is some way to kind of improve and control the response time. So basically, yeah, we wrote the plugin to process all the data and then change the responses. And the other thing that we found is that some API endpoints, it doesn't really make sense to have under the asynchronous endpoint. So there was some like that we've kind of have been flagged as being probably not appropriate, is things like the you know, the token generation. We probably currently this is in the Swagger schema, but things like this we might want to start excluding. So we added a new XML configuration, so Web API async, and what this lets you do is exclude selectively some operations from being included in the asynchronous Swagger. Yeah, so the other thing that you'll note is that the response code is 202 now compared to 200, and that indicates that the request was queued. And then in terms of the status API, the status API is actually, because it's a GET request, in terms of checking the status of a bulk item, that's not classified as part of the asynchronous schema. So once you have your bulk ID, then the status API, well, the current expectation anyway is that you'll be requesting it from the synchronous or regular REST endpoint. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all from me.
Okay, thank you, Kerry. Thank you, Alex. It was a great presentation. So does anybody has questions right now? Okay, let me make a few comments from the Magento side then. First of all, it was really great collaborations with our solution partners, because it sounds like it's just a feature on top of Magento queues, and it sounds like it's just a code, but really they put a lot of work into designing all of these APIs and into discussion of how to implement them better and how to make those designs better. So we had really more than, I would say, 5 meetings before actually starting development, where we just went through the issues outlined in the beginning and trying to understand what would be the best solution for it. So for Magento side, that was very helpful to see this input from different perspectives, not just from the Magento core as we usually have, but from other people who works with our APIs. Second, Magento also took a feedback, and for example, Kerry mentioned the deadlocks, which was created due to the high volume of the API requests. Most of them were fixed. I think I would say all of them, which was found during that work, was fixed already by core team and already merged to the 3 develop. So this is also a great way to get the feedback from the partners to see what else we can improve in the core. And third, which I wanted to mention, that currently we are in process of merging all those requests, and Magento